And the title of her paper is The Faqarāt of Khwājah ʿUbayd Allāh Aḥrār and His Legacy in the Perso-Islamicate Sphere and Beyond.
And I'd first like to extend my thanks to the organizers and especially to Dagi. I'm really very honored to be able to participate in this conference. The late 15th century Naqshbandi Pir, Khwājah ʿUbayd Allāh Aḥrār, who dies in 1490, needs little introduction for scholars of the early modern Eastern Islamic world, especially those with interest in Khurāsān and Mawara. The abundance of Persian manuscript sources contemporary or near contemporary with Aḥrār, which include, let me get my, which include Waqf documents, as you see here, also the unique Majmu'i Murasalat, the letters of Aḥrār, which I published in an edition with the late Asa Murambayev, and many different historical sources, and of course the hagiographies. And so these have contributed largely to the a lasting image of Aḥrār as an influential and charismatic sheikh who was highly successful in attracting, training, and maintaining a loyal following of disciples, some of whom became Aḥrār's khalifas and were sent to other regions to disseminate the Naqshbandi tariqah. There is also Aḥrār's unprecedented involvement, as is well known, in the economic and political spheres of Timurid society, made possible by his extensive Waqf endowments, a sophisticated system of administrative management inside and outside the Naqshbandi community, treated by Jürgen Paul, and close relations with Timurid sultans, princes, and amirs. Yet there's been surprisingly sparse attention paid to Khwājah Aḥrār's spiritual teachings and practice, aside from Jürgen Paul's 1991 study of the Naqshbandiya in the 15th century, and more so in his important work, Doctrine and Organization, the Khwājahgan Naqshbandiya in the first generation after Baha'u'llah, published in 1998. I attribute this imbalance in scholarship to the common perception of Khwājah Aḥrār as a practitioner of Khwājahgan Naqshbandi doctrine and practice, rather than as a theorist or an innovator, and as one whose interests lay equally, if not more, in the Zahir rather than the Batin, amassing wealth. At least this is how he's portrayed. He's represented through his, and the sources, of course, do bear this out, through his extensive Waqf endowments, and also in the hagiographical tradition, jealously guarding his own community from competing Sufi groups and hostile ulama, firmly supporting, of course, the Sharia against any holdover of nomadic principles such as Yasa, acting as a political mediator between warring Timurid princes and Uzbek incursions, and serving as a popular intermediary figure between the Muslim population and the government. These characteristics, some argue, stand in sharp contrast to his close contemporary, the Naqshbandi Sufi poet at the Timurid court in Herat, Abdurrahman Jami, who is characterized as a deeply pious and erudite Sufi thinker, or Aḥrār's own predecessors, Khwājah Muhammad Parsa, and Aḥrār's teacher, Yaqub Charki, who Jürgen Paul contrasts with Aḥrār as a, quote, fully educated ulama. The image that these qualities conjure up is thus one of a peer who promoted and significantly expanded the tariqah outside of Mawara through his khalifas, and who established an elaborate centralized administrative framework inside and outside the Naqshbandiya in Samarkand. While these characteristics may not be far from the truth, they omit an essential aspect of Aḥrār's role as peer, that of a master teacher of Khwājahgan Naqshbandi Sufi doctrine and practice. And so my paper today seeks to provide a more balanced understanding of Aḥrār's role and legacy by examining one of his three risalas, the Faqarāt, which is a Sufi guidebook of sorts of the Irshad tradition. There are at least 5 manuscript copies of the Faqarāt, of which I am aware. In addition to this lithograph edition published in 1910 in Tashkent, there is an Urdu edition, a Turkish and Arabic translations, the recent, fairly recent Persian edition of Arif Noshahi published in Herat in 2015. I utilize two versions of the Faqarāt, which is 140 folios, by the way, for this paper. And the copy I'm using is a manuscript copy from Tashkent from the Institute of Oriental Studies. And Arif Noshahi's, of course, Persian edition, Khwājah Aḥrār, which includes all three of his works, Faqarāt, Hawra'iyya, and Walidiyya. Noshahi has utilized the Sulaymaniya copy of the manuscript. I actually have another copy of this manuscript, not this particular one. The Faqarāt begins with supplications and a lengthy introduction that sets forth the fundamental Khojagan Naqshbandi principles of doctrine and practice, followed by 137 passages that go into greater depth on the principles and practices of Tawheed, Suhbat, companionship, Rabita, the bonding the heart with the Shaykh, Zikra of the heart, and so on. I'll situate us in the Khanaqah of Aḥrār outside of Samarkand. Throughout the Faqarāt, Aḥrār returns repeatedly to the central importance of the Sharia, rules of ethical conduct, adab, and the prophetic example. He includes numerous references to the Quran and Hadith throughout the text, as well as poetic excerpts from the works of Rumi, Jami, and other Sufi poets. The Risala begins with the following supplication. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, O God, with the glory of oneness, fardaniyat, and unity, wahaniyat, and with the oneness, wahdaniyat, of your praiseworthy qualities, we worship and serve only you. With your perfection of your infinite wisdom and power, you revealed the signs of the lights of your beauty and perfection through the window of creation. You made manifest your select ones, Khurāsān, on account of their witnessing, mushahada, the qualities of your perfection, and with your complete favor toward your material beings. And by observing these qualities, you kept the other group, Ta'ifa, completely occupied with the witnessing, mushahada, of these qualities, and you did not abandon them. In this passage, Aḥrār contrasts the Khurāsān, those chosen ones who have witnessed God's qualities of perfection, and the other Ta'ifa, those who have not yet gained the mastery of knowing and witnessing God. Aḥrār continues, O God, whoever other than you is afflicted with two visions, dudidan, who is he who removes the darkness of witnessing, zilmat shuhud, other than you, and the light of your oneness, nuri wahdat. If you have been asked who is a believer in the dervishes of the Khanavadaya Hazrati Khojagan, say it is the belief of the Ahl Sunnat wa Jama'at and the continuation of servitude, ubudat, which is not accomplished without devotion and which consists of continued devotion to His Holiness Almighty God. But it is not possible without disturbing the consciousness, shu'ur, of the existence of another, but forgetting the quality, sifat, of awareness of the existence of Almighty God and receiving this great bliss without discharging divine attraction, jazba. I'll talk about this later, jazba, which is the expression of the appearance of the taste of love, mahabbati zawqiyya. There is no case stronger in the spiritual path of attraction, suluki jazba, than suhbat of a person, of course would be Aḥrār, whose pathway to God is the path of divine attraction, tariqa jazba. If Almighty God, as soon as he pays attention to the suhbat of a person who has the mark of capturing the passion, which is awareness of God through taste, zawq, and the heart enjoys this attention, agahi, he should consider his happiness and submission in general and in part, and know his wretchedness, shakawat, in turning away from him, and always spend his time maintaining proper behavior, adab. Whatever he denies Of course, he should restrain himself from it and not spend himself in displeasure. Make whatever he loves his beloved, and whatever he denies, it must be done in such a way that it becomes an object that only his desire should remain, and all other desires should leave his chest. And when his state, hall, arrives here, let it be that the divine mark, wasf, that has been made on his heart will remain. The one who has not been blessed with this love should engage in zikr according to the law, bar qanun, in order to purify his truth through the perfection of his engagement. And in that purity, he should be able to capture the attraction, again, jazb, of the people of heart and set them free from negative competition and affirmation. It should be known that the intention, maqsood, of all practices is to purify the zikr in the heart of the existence of Almighty God. Now, several points are significant here. First, the practice of jazba, which has been translated in various ways, intoxicated attraction to God by God, which according to the Rashahat was begun actually by Alauddin Attar, the disciple of Bahauddin Naqshband. And it was also favored by Aḥrār's teacher, Yaqub Charhi. I have to leave out some of the text here, but I'll go to passage 7, where Aḥrār defines the pir in terms of his closeness to the prophet, becoming a mirror that reflects the qualities of the prophet, and thus being, quote, endowed with prophetic qualities. We see clearly the central concept of the prophetic paradigm in Aḥrār's pirship. Quote, do you know who the pir is? He answers, the pir is that person who does not have what is not pleasing to Rasulullah, peace and blessings of God be upon him, and what is not from him does not remain. But he should be completely lost from him, and he becomes a mirror that has nothing but the moral traits and qualities, ikhlaq awsaf, of the prophet. In this maqam of being endowed with prophetic qualities, he has become the manifestation of the spiritual interference of Almighty God, and by divine possession, he has occupied the batin of the worthy ones, musta'idan, and he has completely emptied himself and stood up for the desire of Almighty God. This passage is followed by another that describes the murid and the practice of rabita, a major practice of Aḥrār and others before him, the spiritual bonding with God through the concentration on the image of the pir. Quote, the murid is the one who must have been burned by the fire of his desire and has no wish left. And with the inside of the heart, he sees the beauty of desire in the mirror of the pir, turned away from all the qiblas, and his qibla became the beauty of the pir, and he was released and came into servitude, bandagi, of the pir. He came and he did not bow his head except on the threshold of the pir, and abandoned the whole, considered his happiness in accepting him and adversity in rejecting him, his entrance into the tariqa. The line of non-existence, nisti, was drawn on the forehead of existence, wujud, and set free the dispersal of consciousness into the existence of no one other than the pir, unquote. There are a few passages in the Faqarāt that highlight Aḥrār's concern that his murids remain devoted to his community and not become involved in other Sufi circles. And of course, there's quite a lot that's been written about the competition and many different stories in the Malfuzat literature as well. Okay, and also that they consider the Khwajagan Naqshbandi community to be superior to all others due to the past greats of his family, Khanavada. He uses the term Khanavada a number of times in this work. The Khanavadaya Khwajagan, and the material and spiritual support that he's able to provide, which is assistance from Almighty God. Other passages address the practice of the zikr, the particular formula, which is La ilaha illa Allah, and suhbat, the need for the adept to be constantly engaged in zikr of the heart, to the point where the heart is cut off from the pleasure of things, the truth of the zikr, which descends into the heart and becomes the mark on the heart, the practice of rabita, and the practice of the tawheed of love, which depends on the emptying of the heart of everything and is the attainment of perfection of wujudi irfani. Also included, interestingly, in the Faqarāt are 2 letters and 2 vasiyat. And I should mention, I don't know if I did, but the oldest copy that we have can be dated to 895-1490 because of a reference in it to a meeting that Aḥrār had attended. So, if time permits, I think I have enough time to read this passage, number 68, which is a letter. It's not clear to whom it's addressed, but it begins with an iltimas, a request from Aḥrār to his friends, Dastan, to free themselves from being the servant of other than him, and to fully make this Faqir, Aḥrār, his servant, since nothing will remain of him in his dying days. Of course, he dies in 1490. And he says, I became pir. And of course, here he's using the term in 2 ways to reference his age, and also, of course, the fact that he is the pir of the tariqah. But it was still not possible to free myself. It is difficult to take this helpless one from this world. The heavy weight of this Faqir is not possible merely through God's attention, because it has been decreed that the wood of the existence of self, wujudi khudi, is not possible without seizing the fire of pain, the pain of being far and the burning of regret from the intense heat of the persistent witnessing shuhud of neglecting awareness and knowledge to myself. I beg that the noble memory of friends be engaged to the point that Almighty God will awaken this Faqir from the heavy sleep, a sleep of painlessness that will cause his passage. I'm going to skip part of this and go to the next part of this letter. We hope from Almighty God that he will direct this Faqir and all his friends, Dustan, to take care of the tariqah of the Sunnah, the noble ones, the Bozorg Baron of the Khojagan. Truly, they are the intention of creation, the adab, that the morality of this tariqah, human truth, will be freed from the impurity of obstacles, and zikr doers will lose their ego and reach the level of burning and melting, which leads to the attainment of the goal of the workshop of the mortals. Finally, I will end with a statement Aḥrār makes in a second vasiyat included in the text, in which he refers to the all-encompassing nisbat that connects the disciples and all members of the tariqah, indeed all tariqahs, to God, to the Prophet, and to the Khojagan. Aḥrār instructs his readers to engage in reading and studying Sufi books. It's just as general as that. Quote, they should do it in the sense that it should be from the Nisbat to Khojagan and engagement in that Nisbat to Sharif, which is comprehensive of all Nisbats and is the summary and end of all tariqahs, unquote. Given Aḥrār's apparent impending death, he may very well have been referring to the issue of succession, although it's not entirely clear. And we know that it was that he actually combined both the spiritual and the hereditary succession, his successor, Muhammad Qazi, but also his son, Khwājah, as well. In conclusion, the passages from the Faqarāt that I have cited are just a taste of the 137 passages it contains, but hopefully enough to more fully address Khwājah ʿUbayd Allāh Aḥrār's spiritual role as successor to Yaqub Charki and as a teaching peer of the Khojagan Naqshbandi community of Samarkand. Thank you.